This is my 2007 BMW 335i Coupe. I'm changing the spark plugs on it. I watched some other YouTube videos to see how to get everything off back here and to pull this off so I could gain access to the last two cylinders in the back. I just decided to make this video, even though there's some good ones out there. I had to search a couple to get the torque specs on this, which one of the guys said was 17 pounds of torque. And I recommend using a torque wrench. I saw a lot of guys not using them, but this has an aluminum block on it, and I think, you know, you can get away with over torquing on aluminum block a couple times, but the more you over torque, you weaken that aluminum, and maybe the fifth spark plug change, I don't know, you could run into some strip threads. So recommend going ahead and spending the 30 bucks to get yourself a decent torque wrench. This is a 6-inch extension right here, seems to be working fine. 5-inch might be better for that back cylinder. And I'm not replacing the boots, the coils. From what I understand, when these go bad, they go bad. If they're still working, they're all right, and I really don't want to spend $40, $35 to $40 per cylinder just to replace those. So I'm gonna go with what I got for now. When you pull these out, what I'm doing with these is I'm wiping off any of the dust or dirt that might be on here. I'm taking a little bit of the diuretic, whatever you say. Let me see what this is called. It's not diuretic. Dielectric connector grease. Yeah, it's easy for me to say, I know. I'm taking a little dab and putting it right up here and running it around with my finger, just a little bit. I'm also putting a little, this is an old plug, but I'm putting a little bit right here on the new plug, wiping it around. That's just so the boot will slide off nice and easy next time. I'm not putting anything up here, although the grease would do that. I'm going to keep that clean. That's pretty much how these spark plugs are, and the way I imagine that the manufacturer put the plugs in originally. And then I'm taking a little dab of anti-seize, and I'm putting it at the top part of the threads right up here, not down in here, just a little bit, and rubbing it around. And since I'm using anti-seize and it's a lubricant, I'm not going the full 17 pounds of foot torque. I backed it off to 16 1/4, and that feels right. So for any of you that are doing that, you may get some pearls of wisdom from doing this. It's gone real smooth. When you're putting these back on, these coils back on, just keep in mind that they've got a seal around here too, and you got about a ½ inch once you get them down in that you're going to have to push down. With the lube, it'll go on real easy, but you don't want to crimp this. You don't want to crimp this part right here on the plastic on top. And then just put it all back together. So that's pretty much it. That's what I'm doing. 16 1/4 foot-pounds of torque, a little bit of lube, a little bit of anti-seize. I'm using Bosch plugs. I read on some forums, some guys that had some bad experiences with NGK, and there may be some BMWs that you can use NGK on, I don't know. But I'm using the Bosch, the OEM. I didn't buy it from BMW and spend the extra money for the label on there, but these are the Bosch OEM plugs. They looked exactly the same. They are exactly the same. And pretty sure that when this was engineered by the Germans, by BMW, they got together with Bosch, and their engineers came up with this plug for this engine. So I would suggest you just keep on going with what they know works. And good luck. Doesn't take too long. It's really about an hour job tops. One more thing I'll mention: when you're putting the plugs in, you know, you stick them in your tool here, your socket. By the way, I got this online for about 15 bucks. See if they can get the name on that. Schwaben. I also got the torque wrench. That was about 30 bucks online. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on this specific tool. It has a magnet down in there that'll hold the plug in place. When you go to slide it down into the cylinder, you want to be real careful and do it by hand until you got it threaded all the way down to get your torque wrench on there. Don't try to force it or don't use a torque wrench, because you can't tell if you're stripping the threads. And what I do is I turn it counterclockwise until I feel it click into place. That's usually where the thread drops into place, and then I test it and see if I can turn it. Once it gets going, it's real smooth until it gets right down to the end. If it's not smooth, something's going on, you know, back off and try again. Alright, so I finished putting the spark plugs in all these. One thing I'll mention to those who are trying it, when I got to the 5th cylinder back here, this wire was too tight to undo the plug from the coil. So basically I ended up having to take number 5 and number 6 off in order to get number 5 off. So I just did those last 2 cylinders at the same time. When I was pulling out the 6th coil, I accidentally pulled the plug right here. It's this one right here, and that slid right back in and clicked into place, so I didn't do any damage. But that might happen to you, don't panic. And I think we're good. Good luck with what you're doing. Also, when you pull off your micro filter, where is it? Over here, this guy, you'll find that up underneath here, especially if you live in southeast like I do with a lot of leaves and it's fall time, that it's just covered with leaves up underneath here. Even though this is a new filter, there was no way for me to get under it to see how many leaves I had in there. So that might be something to do even if you're not changing spark plugs. After the leaves fall, clean that out so you get a good airflow into the cabin. So I'm going to button this up and finish putting everything back together and hoping it'll run. Okay, I got this back on, and guess I'll keep going with this video. I was putting this back on, this plate right here, and there's a little marker right here. You probably can't see it, but it centers it up with this little notch right here. And there's a clip directly underneath this that you want to start with, and then you can work. There's one over there and one over there. Then you can push it up onto the rubber seal that's in place there. Now I've just got to connect this, put this back, run the hose back the way it was, clip this on, and the rest is easy. But I thought I'd share that. You got to kind of tilt this up and come in at an angle to get to it without breaking off that plastic. Okay, so while I'm at it here, and this is beyond the spark plug thing, but with this filter, I went ahead and vacuumed out the filter because it's filled up with dust from all those leaves I had mentioned or had found. But before I had changed this microfilter about 4 or 5 months ago, when I was taking these out, I realized that 1 or 2 of these was actually stripped. And so I guess whoever worked on this before me, before I had this car, must have made a mistake. So if that happens to you, maybe it's common, I don't know. Basically, I went to Lowe's and picked up some stainless steel, what do you call these? These are like wood, what do you call them? Stainless steel lag, very short. I think this is 1 inch long. Lag screws. Just take one of the old screws up there and just get the very, very next size up in diameter. And since it's going into fairly stout plastic here, it was not a big deal. It just bit its own thread. So these aren't stock bolts, but now this is secure again, and you know, not a big deal, but it might help somebody. What else do I got? That's it.